Now let's further enrich our perspectives with our guest contributors who will give their views and expertise on nearly everything we've covered on the program today, as well as on other subjects. And for this, I'm joined now in the studio by Arise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper, Mahmood Jega, and by the public policy analyst, Chibuzo Okereke. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
Let me come to you, Chibuzo, because you're the man wandering in from outside. You had a lot of dealings with the National Assembly and issues around constitutional amendment. We had Chima Christian earlier talking about, quite passionately, about what he'd like to see happen with the Constitution. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think it's within the constitutional powers of the National Assembly to alter the Constitution in line with the Section 9 of the 1999 Constitution. And we have seen over the years, each assembly constitute Constitutional Amendment Committee. In fact, in the 10th Assembly, it has now become a standing committee. Before now, it used to be ad hoc committee. Right now, it's now a standing committee, just showing that maybe as the year go by, we'll continue to amend the Constitution. And if you ask me, the only alteration that is required in this dispensation is to alter Section 9 only to provide a clause for Constituent Assembly to have powers to make constitution for Nigeria. That is the only alteration we should be seeking for, because a lot of the provisions of the Constitution at the moment, is engrossed with so much ambiguity, right, and has a lot of, So
you want a complete overhaul?
So, yeah, but right now, to constitute it is a problem because there's no provision for that. So the Section 9, if it's altered, then the Constituent Assembly can be constituted for the people to make a constitution for themselves, because there are a lot of provision. No matter how many times you alter it, it will not fly, because the Section 9 already stated that the state houses of assembly need to do two-third majority resolution. So if you send local government autonomy there, it's not going to work, because, you already know what that means in line with Section 7 of the Constitution. So these things are a problem. And also the Constitution didn't even specify how an alteration should be concluded. Is it going to be a normal legislative bill that will require presidential assent, like what we saw in the 7th Assembly, where the entire process was thrown out? They even went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court couldn't help them. So assuming the National Assembly wants to apply Section 58 to veto, to override the president's veto, how exactly is he going to do that? Which of the two-thirds? Is it two-thirds of the National Assembly, right, or another two-thirds that will include state assembly? So definitely we have a problem in dealing with the Constitution, and it's the ground norm. So the people need to own it. And to achieve that, I think we should amend Section 9. Also,
but did you make that submission?
Well, we're making the we're advocating for that, because we're actually part of the process. I know this piecemeal, incremental approach is the popular approach, but that will not help us. And like some people are saying, this memoranda, people have to understand how the legislative process works. The memoranda you are sending is going to the committee for consideration to be considered for their report. Right. If you actually want to make impact, get your member to sponsor a bill for alteration, so that it goes to the committee as a referral. And that's what you're doing. As a referral, yes.
Okay. Well, let me come to you, Mahmood Jega. The whole thing sounds monstrously complicated, doesn't it?
It is. Well, personally, two brief remarks. Number one, I don't think the Constitution is responsible for most of the problems that we have, because really, whatever Constitution you have, I mean, the kind of politicians...
Everything needs to be implemented.
Everything. If people still want to behave the way they are doing, the voters themselves are unreliable. With a small amount of money, they will do anything. Almost no Constitution is going to solve any problem. Secondly, I don't agree with the argument that this is not a people's constitution, this and that. It was pointed out over several years that the 1999 Constitution is more than 90% the 1979 Constitution, which was produced by an elected Constituent Assembly. Quite all right, it was promulgated by a military government by decree, but then the soldiers were the ground norm at that time, so somebody had to promulgate it. Also,
yeah, but didn't they tend to put in ouster clauses?
Absolutely.
At that time, because I can tell you this, I mean, every single constitution that the military presided over, they would say, these are the things you can talk about, these are the things you can't talk about.
No, that was during the, for example, the assembly that Babangida convened in the late 80s.
My father was the chairman of
that is true. So he now saw that there was some kata over some issues, and he came. The same thing happened actually in the 70s over Sharia, when Justice Udo Udoma was chairing the Constituent Assembly.
But they usually use the opportunity to kind of slip in a few more things.
If you look at Section 7, for instance, the Constitution guarantees that local government should be democratically elected. Immediately after IMB, and then charge the state to be responsible to make laws for their function, structure, finance, and other. Then goes to the first schedule to give it functions. So now you gave birth to a child, and then you abandon that.
Well, let's let Mahmood finish his
I agree
thoughts,
with
and then
you
we're going
that
to move on.
with respect to local governments, the matter really has to be sorted out. But this arrangement that we have had since 1999, that every particular session of the National Assembly will form a committee for constitutional amendment. Personally, I don't think that is necessary. And many Nigerians are also skeptical about it. It has become a jamboree. They vote billions of naira and say every member should go and consult. Constitutions are meant to last a generation.
Yeah.
Of course, at any point, if area is identified as a major obstacle in national development, you can always initiate. How many times did the Americans amend their constitution in 220 or 230? I'm not saying we must do like they did, but to come after every 4 years and call for memoranda, everybody starts writing. Although I congratulate your earlier guest for the work they have, Christian, for the work they have done. Although some of the arguments I don't personally think. For example, it is true that the government is increasingly relying on the diaspora, to remit money into the country. But allowing foreign donation of money into the electoral process will certainly create a problem. He gave one example that if your wife is living abroad, that one is not a problem. But the foreign governments and the corporations and others will begin funneling in money, then honestly you have lost your sovereignty. Even the diaspora voting is desirable as a principle. But when you are having serious problems within the,
you want to add
you want to add
to
and say Nigerians
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a good point. Let's move on from there. Mr. Okereke, let's turn to the latest round of fuel shortages to hit Nigeria. It seems like there's no end in sight to the stress of the Nigerian people, in spite of promises that the renovated refineries will soon be flooding the market with supplies. Are you feeling the pinch like everyone else?
What I can say that this is very unfortunate, and this is further widening the gap between the government and the people at a time that where the government should be building the confidence of the people. We're already seeing a lot of challenges from the removal of fuel shortage. Nobody would believe that after that kind of policy you will come and experience a queue. The amount of man-hour that is being wasted, the frustration people are going through, it's not a sight to behold. And I think that it calls for national emergency. At a moment like this, we shouldn't leave the debate for NMPC and independent marketers to talk about logistics. Every logistic can be anticipated, irrespective of the refineries level of completion, as Port Harcourt, 90%, Kaduna, 60%, and what have you. When NMPC tells Nigerians that we have enough supply, and then we can't find it in the station, there is definitely a disarticulation in terms of how, structurally organized they are to deliver for the Nigerian people. And most people depend on this, not just for their transportation and movement, but to power their businesses. So for each time you create this kind of scenario, you have caused damages to businesses, and nobody ever makes compensation for that. So it's unfortunate. The government at the highest level must rise and call those responsible to order and give specific, directive that this should stop, immediately. And I also think that we should begin to look at alternatives, because when there's a concession agreement that brought NMPC into construction of roads, and one of the arguments in that policy is to ease of transportation of their product. So they committed to roads like Ekote Ekpene, Umuahia, and other major roads. So we have to look at alternative means of transportation. A big city like Abuja and some other economic hubs should be able to have a depository that can meet during contingencies. We can't continue to have situation where one truck falls on the road and then we're going to have logistic problem. That is not a way countries should organize.
That's a good point. And Mahmoud Jega, as you were saying, consumers are paying a lot more because of the scarcity, aren't they? And the more prolonged it is, the more pain there'll be. Once again, the Nigerians, the collateral victims of policies that don't appear to be working.
I agree entirely. I mean, and the government, honestly, must have cause for serious worry, because in Nigeria, almost nothing discredits a government like fuel scarcity. By the time fuel disappears, you see all these long queues, people abandon vehicles, they can't go. It creates enormous tension in the country. And really, with the steep increase in fuel prices last year, we thought at least that is the price to pay for regular fuel supply. Of course, there are many arguments. The government is still paying subsidy behind the scenes, and that's what we hear, although they deny it. But whatever it is...
but clearly the cost of fuel has
gone up dramatically.
So much higher it's costing a lot more, and the people are not seeing the petrol.
They're not seeing. But at least the NMPC said that the queues will be over by tomorrow.
Right.
Okay, we hope they are right. But after that, they should work out a system whereby this never happens again. And as Barrister said, carrying trucks, you see all these trucks that are lumbering all the way from Lagos to various, it cannot be done. I mean,
very
huge quantities
inefficient
of fuel should be pumped through pipelines and kept in depots. Of course, we also know the problem with that. Many people are indisciplined, they puncture pipelines and steal the fuel. But certainly that is the way to go, not these 33,000 liter trailers.
Well, let's turn to the lingering scandal of the EFCC versus the former governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello. An extraordinary chain of events that have led up to this moment. I mean, where are they now and where are they headed as you see them?
Well, I think that the EFCC, this is around the first time, I think about the first time we'll see the EFCC chairman address a press conference trying to drive home some of the issues. So I think that probably the approach of the former governor leaves more to be worried about. And I agree entirely with the interview granted by the former governor of Benue, Governor Autumn, who stated that he has tried to reach out to Yahaya Bello to come out and honor EFCC invitation, that this is an embarrassment to the former governor's forum for him to be hiding as a fugitive in a country where he served as a governor for 8 years. And I share in that idea that he should actually honor that invitation. I mean, this is absolutely unnecessary. If you have questions to answer, those questions will not go away because the anti-graft agency, you know, they have done a bit of their job and they said you have something to answer to. So, and the issue of granting court injunction that somebody who served in public office cannot be questioned or invited. I mean, that shouldn't be part of our criminal justice. In fact, it's against the oath of office taken by that individual and the spirit of the Constitution, that if you manage public affairs, you cannot be held accountable for the people. So if you are being persecuted or this is politically engineered, it will show in the way the prosecution, will go. Every Nigerian will see it, and Nigerians that I know, they will sympathize with you and show you solidarity. But if you disappear and say you are relying on a court order, which is not the substantive merit of the issue, nobody is going to sympathize with you.
Absolutely.
So I think that you should honor the invitation and not be embarrassed internationally the way they have declared him wanted. Yeah.
Well, Mahmood Jega, of course, the governor, as he said, remains noticeably at large, yet his media team and so many other people are working round the clock trying to burnish his rather tarnished image, which is, I mean, and that image is quite literally rocking social media. I mean, it's just all over the place.
Well, you can't stop people from trying, but he can only really clear himself through the judicial process.
Well, maybe he thinks that it'll get to a certain point of burnishing that image, then you'll think, okay, we're on equal terms and I'll go to court.
Part of the problem, Charles, is that the EFCC itself sometimes overdoes some of these things in the media. All the documents that were unloaded in the social media, we understand some of them are from the prosecutors. I don't think that is necessary. Lay your hands on the person, charge him to court, and then we will hear the evidence as it unfolds in the court.
Well, the problem is that they can't lay their hands.
Well, they can lay their hands on him, but I don't think it was wise. Some of the things that the chairman of the EFCC said in his press conference, like I phoned him and asked him or even that if he is not prosecuted, I will resign from my post. There is no need to say that. It is your responsibility to prosecute anybody who is suspected of having gotten involved in money laundering. You don't have to resign.
But in a sense, though, it is almost like the people versus the establishment. That there comes a time when you have to draw the line and say, we really must take a stand and ensure that a prosecution goes all the way through. We can't let people get away with things. That seems to be what the EFCC man is saying.
I'm sorry, sir, I don't think so. You see, if, for example, there is reason to believe that the presidency or federal government or someone is deliberately shielding Yahaya Bello from prosecution. You know, there were allegations in previous tenures that when somebody belongs to the ruling party or ruling cycle, he is shielded from prosecution. This does not appear to be the same case. It is Yahaya Bello himself, at best with the support of the governor of Kogi State. That's how it appears, because he went to the house and according to people there, he spirited him out. But that's not the presidency or the federal government. So in the end, the EFCC should be able to lay their hands on him, except if he flees from the country. Unfortunately, he has kind of convicted himself in the court of public opinion, because when you do that, you sit in your house, you barricade, then somebody brings thugs and then spirit you away. Then you hide somewhere and begin releasing videos. No. That is a terrible thing to do. I can't remember anybody in the past who did what Yahaya Bello is doing. But there is no evidence that it is the presidency or the federal government that is shielding him from prosecution for now. So therefore, there was no need to threaten to resign if he is not prosecuted. That's the way I see it.
Okay. We've got 30 seconds, a final word from you.
Well, I think that our democracy is fragile. We need a strong political leadership to make progress as a country, and it's important that every politician understand responsibility, accountability. You are responsible for the people, and you have to be accountable to the people, both in terms of management of their funds and in the kind of policy that you put out. The context you mentioned about the EFCC chairman saying we've got to start, take a stand. It may have sounded emotional about it, obviously because of, and if you call back the video where he was in the Senate for confirmation, I think that he's a very emotional person who has seen a lot within the system. Recently, he mentioned the case that
very briefly, that
our accounting system is porous, that he allows people to take 14 billion, within an hour, and this is something we should worry. And that is part of the reason I said our laws. Accountant General of the Federation of this country is not prescribed in the Constitution with duties and responsibility. So he simply serves at the pleasure of somebody.
So
these things need to change.
A lot to do. Chibuzo Okereke, public policy analyst, I want to thank you very much indeed. And of course, Mahmoud Jega, a Rise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper. Thank you ever so much. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.